Today is one of those days that we get a pretty intense series of readings. So I want us to start by hearing once again that opening line from the gospel today. Jesus said, "I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled." Now, I want you to think. What did you picture when you heard about Jesus saying, "I came to bring fire to the earth"? Do you picture a destructive blaze? Do you imagine maybe bombs or a violent, roaring, destructive fire? Do you imagine all kinds of death and destruction and famine? Do you picture an apocalypse? Or do you picture a fire on Christmas morning while you're opening presents? Do you picture a campfire complete with s'mores and hot dogs and maybe someone strumming a guitar singing Kumbaya? Do you picture the fire that burns in someone's heart when they're inspired by the Holy Spirit? A fire of warmth and of passion and of desire. What do you picture? Because either way, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But maybe thinking about different kinds of fire gives us something that we can chew on. Because after he says that, Jesus then says, he didn't come to bring peace, but rather division. Well, what kind of a message is that? Households will be divided, he tells us. Dads against their sons, and moms against their daughters, and in-laws against in-laws. What are we going to do with that? Then Jesus tells us that we know how to recognize the presence of rain clouds when we see them off in the distance, and they're blowing our way. We can see the storm brewing, or at least we ought to be able to. And the same is true when it comes to something called conflict. What do we do as a community when we experience conflict? Because conflict, that word can be scary, and conflict can sound to us like it's a bad thing, but it doesn't have to be. What's important is how we engage with conflict in a healthy way. And to do that, first of all, it's important to remember we don't want to intentionally make enemies. Because what's the benefit of creating alliances and pitting people against each other? The goat really deserve punishment for something the goat didn't do? No. But it was easier to attach the punishment to the goat than it was for people to take accountability for their actions. So I'm going to present you with some hypothetical questions, and I want you to reflect on them, not just today, but going forward. Who are your safe people? Do you have a tendency to practice scapegoating with those people or with other people? And if so, what steps can you take to dig deep and to identify the real cause of what we call disowned emotions? Now, yesterday at the men's breakfast, I was so thrilled to hear people taking initiative and asking themselves very similar questions, and then holding one another accountable. You see, what we have in today's gospel isn't a threat. It's simply an explanation of human emotion. And like my grandson, although maybe not always to that level of intensity, when things don't go the way we think maybe they ought to, it's human nature to respond and react. And sometimes our actions are misdirected and even hurtful and harmful to others. So how do we develop those skills to look for those rain clouds? How do we develop our ability to check that temperature? Two words, two uncomfortable words. Well, one word really that's hyphenated. Ready? Self-reflection. You see, Jesus is spot on. Households become divided in conflict because those in our homes are usually our safe people to direct our disowned emotion. It's called family systems theory, and it's a real science. And Jesus knew that the church would also operate as a family system. Conflicts at church are very common. Why? Well, because people are so emotionally and spiritually invested that they behave the same way that they would behave at home with their own families. Closeness can amplify all kinds of emotions, and it can amplify all kinds of behaviors. What this means for us is that at home and at church and at other safe spaces, maybe for some of us that might be our place of employment, we need to be conscientious about being particularly self-aware. And we have to ask ourselves questions like, I'm feeling really upset right now that candle isn't where it was last week. Is this really what I'm angry about? Or is it something else? Because I got news for you. It probably ain't about where the candle is or was. Who are the safe people at a church? Is it the wardens? Is it the vestry? Is it the parish administrator? Is it the musician? Is it the clergy? Is it all of these people? Now, do I from time to time blame Michelle or Deacon Chuck if something isn't right on the screens or in the presider book? Maybe, but is it appropriate for me to do that when the error might have actually been that I wasn't clear enough when I added something to the liturgy? No. It could be one of those things. But it's important for me to get all the necessary information before I rush to a conclusion. Otherwise, I might really hurt the feelings of people I care about deeply, especially if I find out later that it's my own fault and not theirs. Sometimes that storm comes. Yep, even in churches. But as Jesus says, we're not hypocrites. We can see it coming if and only if we know what to look for. And it starts with ourselves. You see, we can't control the behaviors or the actions of others, but we can develop a deeper ability to control our own actions and behaviors. We have to own our feelings. We have to take responsibility for them. If I become angry with Father Harry, for instance, then I have a responsibility to own my feelings of anger. And what I need to communicate is, Father Harry, I feel very angry. And not, Father Harry, you've made me very angry. Because the second example scapegoats Father Harry and makes him responsible for my feelings. I need to own my feelings. And I need to own my reactions. Because disowning my feelings and lashing out in aggression can hurt his feelings badly and potentially cause irreparable damage. There's so much tension in our world today, and there's a lot of division. Now, is all of this tension and division really necessary? Probably not. But will everyone do the difficult work of self-reflection? Probably not. But there's one thing each of us can work on controlling: our own responses and reactions. It takes effort, and it isn't comfortable. I don't like to feel regret because I wish I'd have behaved differently or responded differently. I don't like to look at my dirty laundry. But I also can't improve my behavior going forward if I'm not willing to do the hard work of looking inward. It's my responsibility to be self-reflective and to be honest with myself. Am I satisfied with how I responded? And what might I do differently if given the opportunity to do it again? So I get to decide for myself, what kind of fire do I want to kindle? Do I want to create a fire of death and destruction and violence and vengeance? Or do I want to kindle a fire of warmth and of comfort and of tranquility? And maybe a fire that I can use to cook food. A life-giving fire that brings comfort and joy and even light to as many people as possible. I get to decide for me, and you get to decide for you. I know I'd prefer to kindle the second kind of fire. What kind of fire do you want to kindle?